Gold Shields brings true stories from law enforcement, the military, true crime authors, and first responders. Experience the dedication, danger, and emotional toll with the heroes themselves. These gripping tales of true crimes, true stories, and true heroes are all here on Gold Shields.
Welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. Every week we bring you incredible interviews with people who made unbelievable cases, those who support them, those who chronicle them. We're here about honoring law enforcement and giving a shout out to the men and women who do incredible work, most of which you don't see. A couple of things we want to do before we go off to our guest today, who we are so honored to have on the show. First is going to be, we want to talk about Impact. CarryImpact.com if you want a chemical irritant spray that is not pepper spray, not CS, not going to mess up everything in the world around it, but going to do the job you need and clean up quickly. CarryImpact.com. You're going to look for CarryImpact.com online. It's the best product out there for personal defense, also for law enforcement use. Secondly, you notice every single show, I'm drinking my favorite coffee in the world, Bone Frog Coffee, made by Tim Cruikshank and his amazing team. Fantastic coffee. bonefrogcoffee.com/goldshields. You get an extra discount on the best coffee you'll ever drink. I was a cop for 20 years and live on the stuff. Bone Frog's all I drink. Do yourself a favor. Right, Tom? How you doing this morning, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Excited about this show. We look forward to this for a while. The one thing I want to do before we get going, everyone who listens to the show, everyone who watches the show and follows us knows the connection we have to the Navy SEAL community. Dan just mentioned one with Tim Cruikshank and his team at Bone Frog, which is Tim's a former Navy SEAL. Hector Delgado, Sully. I mean, we have a host of followers and friends that are in that community. And they lost two heroes this past week off the coast of Somalia doing an operation. And we just want to give our blessing and our prayers to Navy Special Warfare Operator First Class Christopher Chambers and Navy Special Warfare Operator Second Class Nathan Ingram. 37 and 27 years old. I mean, out there protecting this world, and that's what they do. And they don't ask for any fanfare. They don't ask for anything, and they go do it. And they are just such heroes, and we're lucky to have them kind of in our inner circle. So we just want to send our prayers out there to them, their families, and the entire Navy SEAL community.
Yeah. We are blown away by the professionalism, and we're so blessed as Americans to have people like, other special operators, not taking anything away from them, but just focusing on the SEALs for a minute. Unbelievably talented, skilled, dedicated, committed, badass people out there protecting us from the evil that lives in this world, and we are blessed to have them. So we send prayers out to them and their families, and we know that heaven has a place for them because they're doing God's work on earth. So today, shifting over, we have a guest that, as you mentioned, we're so thrilled to have on, Jay Dobyns. What a career, what a life, what a man. The most important thing is that this man has character and integrity on top of everything that he has done. He's the author of two incredible books, No Angel and Catching Hell, Story of Abandonment. He's got a full story on his career and what he did as an ATF undercover. If you haven't read his books, read them. You will not put them down until you're done. That's what I did. Jay Dobyns is somebody we look up to immensely. He personifies what it is that law enforcement is all about: professionalism, courage, and the dedication to getting the job done despite bureaucracy, infighting, nonsense. Everything comes at you from every angle. Without further ado, we want to welcome very warmly, we're thrilled to have Jay Dobyns here on Gold Shields. Good morning, Jay, and thank you so much for your time and being with us today.
Dan, Tom, your sponsors, your audience, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So, Tom, how long has it been since we've been trying to get in touch with Jay to get him on the show? It's not easy, but the man is, he makes himself available, and we really appreciate that. He's top tier one operator in our world.
Yeah, when you have the opportunity to get someone like Jay on, and Jay's, he's such a humble guy, and you are, and you're gonna hate 90% of the stuff we say about you today, but too bad, deal with it. Uh, you're a legend. I mean, when you mention your name, and your name got mentioned to us, it was a no-brainer. Before even meeting you, we knew your name, we knew what, you were all about, and to have you on here is an absolute privilege and an honor, and thank you, as Dan just mentioned. Uh, on top of getting, into the early years, sort of, you were a pretty big deal with football. And the reason I bring that up, not to highlight your football career, but I want to touch on it because so many times that we speak to law enforcement people who are successful in law enforcement and the military, a lot of them have sports backgrounds. And one kind of leads into another and how you operate, how you act, how you prepare, and that's what kind of I wanted to touch on with you. With the success you had in your career, did what you did in sports help with that?
Absolutely it did. I think one thing leads to the next. I think the people in life that are successful, many of them have some type of team background in their history, whether it be law enforcement or any of the other things that we might be talking. It's simple. Uh, Goes from relationships to running a family to running a business to running a sports team to running a law enforcement operation or a military operation. People that have learned that the things we're doing are bigger than themselves typically are successful. There's a common denominator there, which is their ability to communicate. It's so important in everything we do, every aspect of our life, our ability to communicate. Because when you communicate well, then you build trust, and trust leads to loyalty. And with that communication base, when you have trust and loyalty, you can solve problems together. And the world's highest achievers, regardless of the profession, are problem solvers. Every day we're getting hit with problems. The people that can address them, solve them, and be smart about it and work together with others, typically, regardless of what they're doing, what their calling is, what their profession is, are successful.
Yeah, I would actually echo that and then some. So where'd you grow up, Jay, and what led you to University of Arizona and on to the ATF? Let's hear this story.
Yeah, I was born outside Chicago, just over the state line in Indiana. I basically grew up in Tucson, Arizona. My folks moved us out here when I was a kid. My dad was a carpenter, cut hair, and was a house cleaner. So I came from a very blue collar upbringing. And I think that's part of ultimately like who I became. Like, I don't take myself too serious. I'm very much a common man who was placed in some uncommon situation and just did the best that I could. There's days when I succeeded. There's days when I failed. There's days when I got it right. And there was actually too many days where I got it wrong. But it's all part of it. I think any of us, anybody, especially in the law enforcement community and the military community, like they all have hero stories. Everybody has legitimate, like pipe hitter hero stories. But if we don't also like discuss our mistakes and our failures and our shortcomings, then I think it takes away from those hero stories, those pipe hitter stories, because honesty and transparency leads to credibility.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Very true. Very true. I failed more than I succeeded in everything I've ever done in life. And I think the maturity and the ability to step up and say, you know what? Hey, I made a lot of mistakes, got lucky sometimes. And the ability to give it over to others when you do well and say, this was a group effort, everybody, as opposed to me, adds that credibility too.
I think when you set high standards for yourself, when you have a perfection as a goal, it's nearly impossible to reach that. Probably is impossible to reach it. But those standards uh, as the groundwork, that's what we should be striving. We should be striving to be perfect. Like, I want to be a perfect interview for you guys today. Like, trying to be perfect wherever our feet are is important. I won't be. I won't be a perfect interview. I'll make mistakes. I'll misspeak. I'll end up looking at this and saying, like, you could have said what you said better. But that's where it needs to start. You need to start at, like, striving to be the very best you can be.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Again, very well said. Very well said. So you grew up in Tucson. You found your way to the University of Arizona. Obviously, football was a big part of your life. Tell us about that experience and what you took from it.
I did. I played football at the University of Arizona. It was an interesting path getting there. You know, when I was a kid, man, I was just a straight sissy as a little kid. I got beat up all the time. I didn't fight back much. There's a story, you know, when I was very young, I was getting beat up in my front yard, and my dad came out of the house. You know, I thought he was coming to rescue me, coming to save me. And he told the bullies, man, keep hitting him, keep beating on him. And he's yelling at me. He's like, Jay, fight back. You, no one's coming to save you. There's always someone bigger and stronger out there. And if you don't learn to fight back, you're going to be a victim for the rest of your life. Like those, you know, lessons as a young boy, like a teaching moment for my dad, who was a very kind, gentle man. Like that teaching lesson, I'm sure was hard for him, but he was trying to develop a man, trying to raise a man. And, you know, like through adolescence, like I wasn't one of the cool kids. I was a nerd. I was, you know, I was kind of a weirdo, and I got teased and picked on. But through that process of growing up, I learned to despise bullies. I learned to despise people that somehow made themselves feel bigger or better by making someone else feeling smaller, because I experienced it. So ultimately, it turns out that the sissy nerd weirdo got pretty good at catching footballs. And so I played at the University of Arizona. I had a nice college football career. And then ultimately that led me, actually the failure of my football goals, not being able to get as far as I wanted to as a football player, ultimately landed in law enforcement. I was like a lot of kids. Football wasn't working out the way I thought it was. I never had a plan B. I'd always planned on playing professional football. And when I realized that that wasn't going to happen, that I wasn't good enough, like a lot of young people, I had to figure out, like, what's next.
Oh yeah, I think you know we've all gone through that with certain things in life. You know, it's great to have a goal. It's great to have, you know, something to look forward to and to push yourself towards. But you know, there's always got to be, and what a lesson. I mean, you just laid out a life lesson for people listening to the show who are young. You know, there is nothing wrong with having a plan B. There's nothing wrong with having an idea in your pocket just in case. You know, that's such great advice. And, you know, I went through similar things with, you know, with baseball and always having law enforcement, you know, which was my priority to become. But you always have a plan B. I tell my kids that, you know, they have great goals and great aspirations in life, but hey, not everything always works out, you know, and I also believe, and Danny is a firm believer in this, that everything happens for a reason as well. You know, things fall into place for certain reasons, and you were meant to do something else. And what that was extremely dangerous and successful.
Well, you know, I finished my college career, and I had a successful college career, and I went to the NFL Combine, which, for people that aren't football fans, the NFL Combine is their meat market. They test you and weigh you and measure you and put you through all kinds of drills. But I went into that like with my plan A intact, like super confident. And I was with a group of people, and I realized after 10 minutes of being on the grass with some of these other kids, and like, this isn't going to work out the way you thought it would. I couldn't do what they could do. I wasn't as fast or as big or as strong or as athletic as they. Now, two of the guys in my group that I was assessing or analyzing myself against, one was Andre Reed, who ended up playing 15 years for the Buffalo Bills and played in 4 Super Bowls. The other guy was Jerry Rice, who was arguably like the greatest football player to ever put on a helmet and shoulder pads. So I wasn't judging myself against the fairest competition, right? I was judging myself against the best who ever caught a football. But nonetheless, I didn't have a plan. But this was the mid 80s. And you guys will understand this. Some of your audience might be too young for this. But at the time, like all we'd ever seen through the entertainment industry, through television or Hollywood, was police procedurals. We'd seen uniformed cops. We'd seen detectives showing up reactively to crime scenes. And then Miami Vice came up. And Sonny Crockett is running around South Beach, and he's driving a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. He's got a Hugo Boss suit, and he's meeting these drug kingpins. And it's this sexy, glamorous life. And I was like, man, like, I think I can do that. I want to try to be Sonny Crockett. Now, after I got into it and realized that it's not a sexy, glamorous life. At times, it's a nasty, dirty, bloody, vomit-covered scab of a life. When I realized that Hollywood had tricked me, I still loved it every day, man. When my alarm clock went off, I was excited to put my feet on the ground. I was excited to go to work and see what was going to happen and see what I could do, see what I could accomplish.
Yeah, that's incredibly, excuse me, vivid imagery that you laid out there, but so accurate. You really do see the ugliest underbelly of the world, but it's exciting at the same time. Tom and I talk all the time about how when we were young cops, we couldn't wait to go to work. You got there early beyond early. You'd go in to go to the gym. What are you doing here 2.5 hours before your shift? I'm going to work out. I'm going to read, find out what happened last night, and look forward to what might happen tonight. Because it is truly one of those jobs where every day is unique, and it can be a day of relative boredom, or it can be a day of sheer panic, fear, adrenaline, excitement. It can be a combination of both. And
you guys know better than and as well as any that, and this was the mentality that I had from the day I got sworn in. When they handed me a badge and handed me a gun, like I was honored and privileged to be asked to stand up for the people in my community. I took that very serious, the responsibility to take a stand on behalf of good and innocent people against predators who were trying to disrupt their lives. That was super important.
You mentioned about bullies. I think the average cop or law enforcement agent in this world will tell you they hate bullies. It's a motivating factor to go to work because you see somebody being picked on, you want to stop it. And you're right. I hated bullies, always hated them. I think more than once in my life I was a victim of them as a young kid. But that's a real motivating factor. Tom, you were going to say?
Yeah, and just exactly that. You would say your hatred and your, about bullies. Criminals are bullies. That's what they are. They prey on weak and they're bullies. So for you to have already that in your DNA, to bring that into law enforcement makes it even more a powerful job for you. And you said one thing, and we've said it over and over again. And in order to do this job successfully, ATF, NYPD, LAPD, wherever you go, you have to love it. You can't like it. If you just like it, you're not going to be successful, and you're not going to have the right frame of mind to be successful and go out there and do what's needed every day. You have to love what you do. And just because the three of us are on the show right now, the three of us loved our job. And just with that aside, you had, you get into ATF and you had one hell of a first day, huh, bro?
Yeah, I got sworn in on a Monday, and I raised my hand and took my oath. And 4 days later, I was in an arrest operation where I ultimately was taken hostage and shot. I was held with a gun to my head. Uh, Shootout occurred. I got shot in the back. The bullet went in my back point blank. It passed through my lung. It narrowly missed my heart. It exited my chest. And so, after 4 days on the job, I was laying in the dirt and garbage, a trailer park, with blood coming out of my chest like you're holding your thumb over the end of a garden. And, we get paid every 2 weeks. I hadn't gotten a paycheck yet. It was, I comped that one. That one was on the house.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I remember reading about that in your book. But that's what can happen, and that's. But doesn't that? If I know you well enough, and I don't really know you that well, but I've read your book, and there's a lot of your heart is in there. That motivates you. The average person would have left that job. The average person, a sane person, you might say, would have said, "Nope, not for me. This is a sign."
Well, there was attorneys, liability attorneys, lining up at the hospital after news of what had happened took place. And they were coming in and saying, "Man, you know what $1 million looks like?" And like that wasn't the lifestyle I ever lived. I had no idea. How about $5 million? They were telling me, "You tell me how many zeros you want on the check, and I can get it for you. I can get an easy exit out of this for you, because you were placed in a situation that you weren't yet trained for, you weren't yet prepared for, you never should have been there. The government has assumed a huge liability with you. How much do you want to leave?" And really, all I wanted was for that attorney to leave. No cop ever took a badge and a gun with money on his. None of us ever thought we were going to get rich, and if you did, then rethink it, because that's not going to happen. I just wanted to get back to work and try again and see if I could do it right. See if I could do it without embarrassing myself. See if I could do it without compromising the people I work with. I wanted another chance.
So, how long was your recuperation from that before you went back to your regular performance of duties?
It was actually relatively quick. The injury was a severe injury, but I was in supreme physical condition. I had just got done playing football at nearly the highest level available. So I got shot right before Thanksgiving in 1987. I showed back up at work right before Christmas. So 5 weeks later. And I remember my boss, who was a good man, he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Man, I didn't take this job to lay on my couch and feel sorry for myself. I wanted to come back. I know I'm not ready, for a full assignment, but I want to be a part of it." And he was like, "Dude, do you not understand how work comp works? You can have 3 months completely to yourself. And if you need more time after that, they'll give you another 3 months." He goes, "You could literally stay away from here for a year and collect a paycheck." And I was like, "Man, who takes this job just to watch money hit their bank account? If it's not bigger than that for you, then it's probably a good time to find something else to do."
So well said. So well said. No one, like I said before, the love of the job is it. None of us, and we've known thousands of people like this, don't get into this job for money, don't get into it for rewards, don't get into it for all of that. It's just the job. It's doing the job. And it's, to hear that is so, it's what this job is. It's what we love about this job. And people who do it at the highest level feeling that way is what makes it great.
Well, I've been fortunate, or maybe unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, to have cases and operations that I worked on, receive what you just said, to receive publicity and to receive some recognition and awards. But for every person like me who receives some kind of public attention or acknowledgement, there's tens of thousands of officers out there who no one ever hears what they did. No one ever knows their name. They get up every morning and they pour their kids a bowl of cereal and they have a cup of coffee with their wife or their husband, and they kiss their families goodbye with no guarantee that they ever get to come home, and they leave home to take care of other people's families. And they do it knowing that they're going to be retaliated against and critiqued and assaulted and spit on and stabbed and shot and possibly killed. And they still go. They still get up and leave their families and go, and they go for the right reasons. And our society and our culture has grown to fail to acknowledge that. And that's shameful.
Mm-hmm. People who do this work, as you said, don't do it for the money. If you did, you're in the wrong line of work. Recognition, we don't do it for, but the risk is there all the time. It's an inherent risk that you just accept. And especially as time goes on and you see craziness. It took you 4 days to see how bad the job can be, how bad some of the effects of doing that job can be. Tom and I in our careers knew people who were killed in the line of duty, shot and seriously injured in the line of duty, people who committed suicide because of stresses and traumas and inability to deal with them or seek out resources that either were or weren't there. There's a million things that can go wrong as a result of doing this, yet you still stay laser focused on the job.
Well, to follow up on that, and in agreement with you, that you don't have to hunt violence. Violence is hunting you. And if you're not prepared to confront that violence with an equal or overwhelming amount of your own violence to contain that situation, then man, today's a good day to go sell insurance or go back to school, because it's coming for you. They're hunting you.
It's true. When you least expect it, it's going to pop its head up. And I can remember moments of sheer boredom followed instantaneously by moments of insane violence right in front of me or pointed at me. And it's just part of what you accept. So knowing these things, you come back to work. How does it come to be that you find yourself in a position where you're acting in an undercover capacity, involved in and trying to infiltrate the Hells Angels? Now, the story here is amazing, how this other group that you joined and sort of formed. Please lead us into that if you don't mind, because it's fascinating.
Well, it sounds quick, but it actually wasn't. Before the opportunity to make this infiltration run at the Hells Angels was presented to me, I had 15 years of undercover experience. I'd bought everything from Saturday night specials to shoulder launch rockets. I'd bought everything from street dope, from dime bags and 8 balls to cartel level dope. I'd bought everything from homemade PVC pipe bombs that some tweaker was making in his mom's garage to servo-activated remote control C4 IEDs. I'd been involved in home invasion operations and murder for hires. So I had 15 years of undercover experience, like trying to hone that tradecraft before the opportunity was presented to me to take a run at the Hells Angels. And when the case agent came to me and asked me to lead the undercover operation, my first reaction to him was, dude, I can name 10 guys off the top of my head that will probably serve you better in this role than I can. Guys who've developed expertise in the biker culture and the biker world with outlaw motorcycle gangs. But I'd had an established reputation in the criminal community in our area of operation as a gun runner and a debt collector. And his argument to me was, man, you'll figure it out, but you've got such a great head start for us. Let's take advantage of it.
Wow. And that was one of the, and Dan just hit on it. I had it written down. That's why we think alike. See, Dan. Uh, uh, that was my thing. Like being a case detective a lot, Dan being a supervisor and a case detective. That was the one thing I really wanted to ask you. Like, what was the predication with the operation starting? Was it just, hey, was there a lane? Was there an opportunity that opened up for you guys? Or I mean, that's not a, hey, let's go buy, an 8 ball down on the corner. This is a monster operation. So I was very curious how it started.
Well, as a kickoff, like I'd already laid some groundwork, as I said earlier in our operations. I was buying guns and buying bombs and portraying myself to be this debt collector, part of my cover story. And in the midst of this, the Hells Angels in Mesa, Arizona had lured a woman to their clubhouse by the name of Cynthia Garcia. And Cynthia showed up, like intrigued by the reputation of the Hells Angels and the kind of the myth of the party and the fun and the excitement of all that. In the process, Cynthia mouthed off to the Hells Angels, and it insulted, and she made some fatal mistakes. You don't insult the Hells Angels. You don't insult them in the presence of multiple members, and you surely don't insult them in their own house. And they beat and boot stomped her to the brink of death in the Mesa clubhouse. Then they wrapped her up in some old carpet, put her in the trunk of a car, and drove her out to the desert and cut her head off. That was what they deemed to be an appropriate response to being insulted. So that was a critical event that we obviously, as in law enforcement, had an obligation to try to figure out who's who in the zoo. And then the second really big event was the Hells Angels and their West Coast rival, the Mongols, got in a massive shootout riot at the Harrah's Casino in Laughlin, Nevada. And, this riot was caught under hundreds of closed circuit cameras. You could, see it intimately, how violent they were. Well, Laughlin, Nevada is right across the Colorado River from Bullhead City, Arizona, which is where I was operating as a gun runner and a debt collector. So like I already had overlap with the Hells Angels, like during those two critical events that, led the case agent and led the agency to say, look, if we're going to portray ourselves to be America's violent crime police, like this, we don't have a choice to make. We have to go after this.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that's just one snippet of the Hells Angels and their legacy and the violence of the outlaw gangs, motorcycle gangs in this country. And there's a long history of it dating back to, I think it's after World War II, when they first started forming up, soldiers coming back from war. I read some about that.
The violence that they're involved in is a daily occurrence. It's reported on daily. It's part of that lifestyle. Like we were talking from a law enforcement perspective, that if you're not prepared to meet violence, you're probably in the wrong business. Well, if you're a Hells Angel, if you're not prepared to have violence a part of your life, then man, go sell used cars, because it's part of that lifestyle.
Is it? And long before you get your patch, long before that, you've accepted it and you've done it. There's just no way around it, at least. And I learned a lot about what it takes to become one by reading your book. So how do you get inserted? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when I was being recruited into the gang, one of the club, the charter presidents, said, there's a couple things that I can promise you if you're going to ride with us. Violence, prison, and death. I said, like, that's your sales pitch? And he's like, that's my honest assessment of this lifestyle. So if you don't have the stomach for it, step away.
Wow. I mean, and then Listen, undercover operations are dangerous. Dan and I were in narcotics and dealt with sending undercovers into operations, which was stressful enough sitting in a car, a couple blocks away, listening to things going on and having to stay away and not listen to it. And then you hear this, what you had to do and go through on your own with no one around and just your God-given ability to do stuff is mind-blowing to me. And Dan and I go through this all the time with guests that you know stories and you read about them and then you hear it and it's a totally different, you know, acknowledgement of what you did. So, I mean, this whole concept had to have taken your life over.
Well, I'll tell you what, whether anybody out there in the audience that's listening to this agrees or disagrees with the morals or ethics of undercover work, with that element of tradecraft being a part of an investigator's toolbox. It's just undercover work is just one tool in an investigator's toolbox. But deception is sanctioned through the courts in every state. It's a permitted tactic that law enforcement is allowed to use. But people don't like being deceived. No one wants to be deceived. Anybody that's been deceived or betrayed knows how painful that is. And so when you're operating under a false persona and you're being successful about it, there was a point in time when the Hells Angels would have stepped in front of a bullet for Jaybird Davis, the gun runner debt collector. At the same time, if they would have learned that Jaybird Davis was tricking them and was actually J. Dobyns, a federal agent, those same people that would have defended me and protected me would drag a straight razor across my throat or hit me on the back of the head with a baseball bat.
Absolutely. That's the greatest deceit there is in their mind. You work into their trust, they trust you, and then you turn around and pull the badge out at some point. And that's, but I can only imagine what you had to go through. The average undercover in America that works in policing is undercover for, this is the average, a couple of minutes at a time, making a drug buy, making a gun buy, a couple of hours at a time here and there, go back to their life at night. You were submersed in this world. You were immersed in it. 24/7, you had to have your head on a swivel, right?
But then, you know what? I agree with that, but like I want to supplement that comment. In a long-term case, you have the time and the ability to, those things we talked about earlier, build trust, build loyalty, sometimes even build love with the people you're working. Those short-term cases, those street buys that are going on right now, as we speak, there are men and women, lawmen and women out there operating undercover. And those street buys are the most dangerous operations that we run because you haven't had a chance to build a relationship. You haven't had a chance to build trust. You're an unknown dealing with people who are uniquely paranoid. Criminals are uniquely paranoid. And they're paranoid because that's how they stay out of jail. That's how they avoid going to prison, by not trusting newcomers, by not trusting the new face. And so when there's no trust there, when there's skepticism, and you're out there, on the street corner, buying a bag of dope, man, that is so dangerous.
Mm-hmm. No, very, very well put. And
it's wild
100%
hearing you say that
true. You're
in
correct.
what you did.
I guess I think I was talking about slightly
that,
different to the extent that you've got to go home. If you've got a wife and a family or a husband and a family, how do you go home and turn that off? How do you go to the mall on a weekend and watch out to see if somebody notices you, right?
We talked about earlier, like everybody in our profession has hero stories. But like I've got just as many failures and mistakes as well. And probably my biggest regret is through my career and the lifestyle of undercover work that I embraced, I made that my priority. And I regret that now. My family, my wife and my kids were not my priority. My work was. And that's a shameful statement to make. especially to an audience. I don't know who's hearing this, who's going to be disappointed in hearing like that personal, like self-reflection. I'd be gone for extended periods of time. At one point, I'd been gone for a big chunk. I came home and my wife told me, "You cannot be gone and then walk in this house and speak to us and treat us like we're street gangsters." And then in my defense, I was like, "Man, like I'm not a light switch. I have to be on all the time. People that do what I do for a living and treat it like a hobby end up dead." And then her response was, "I understand that, but when you come to this house, you better install a dimmer switch and dial that attitude down. And if you can't do that, don't come back."
Wow. That's rough. That is rough. And wow, I don't envy you.
Like over the course of my career, I would come home off the street and do the minimum that I had to do to keep my family functioning. I'd pay the bills, pat the kids on the head, spend a little bit of time with my wife. I couldn't wait to get back on the street and be smoking and joking with gangsters. That was my life. That was my identity. And so when I'd leave to go back to work, my son, who was a young boy at the time, would run out in the yard and say, "Dad, like, don't leave yet." And he'd bring me a little rock out of the yard. And over the years, I'd saved every rock that he'd given, these good luck charms, and I kept them. I kept one in my pocket all the time. I had them in the saddlebags, my motorcycle, my undercover car, my undercover house. I was handing them out to my partners, telling them, like, "I don't know what kind of blessing Jack's putting on these rocks, but it's working. We have all this violence and murder swirling around us. It's working." So right before I was ready to, I was leaving the house to like kind of make the final push on this Hells Angels case. Same routine. "Don't leave yet, Jack. Don't leave yet, Dad." And so Jack comes running up with this rock. And he gives me this rock and he's like, "I've been saving this one for you. It's special. It's shaped like a heart. And hearts mean love." And he gives me this rock. And so I'm this 40-year-old father trying to comfort a 10-year-old boy. And I was like, "Dude, I'm almost done. And all those things I've been neglecting, like we're going to do. We're going to ride bikes and wrestle and play catch and go to the movies and read books." And I said, "It's all because of your good luck charms. That's why I'm almost done with this." And this little boy's standing on my driveway and tears start running down his cheeks. And he's like, "Dad, those weren't for good luck and you shouldn't have given them to anybody else. They were just for you." And my brain froze. For years, I thought he'd been giving me good luck charms. And he's like, "Those were for you to put in your pocket. And every time you thought someone was going to shoot you or hurt you or stab you, you could put your hand in there and touch it. And that would be like me being there to help you fight them." That was, my job wasn't to be some super cop. My job wasn't to be Donnie Brasco Part 2 or to infiltrate the Hells Angels. My job was to raise a family. My job was to raise good kids. And I was failing. I was failing my family.
But
Man,
wow.
those are hard life lessons to learn, especially when your 10-year-old son has to teach it to you.
Wow. Wow. Very, very, very real, very raw. Thank you for sharing that. And it's a lesson that many of us should learn, especially since when the case was finally finished, your second book talks about how you were treated. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and like as a precursor to that, the things that happened to me were not the ATF that I grew up in, that I knew that I came to love and be honored to be a part of. But unfortunately for me, I was under the supervision, not only some corrupt executives, some criminal, I started getting death and violence threats. Uh, and they were widespread. The threats extended, beyond me to my wife, to my kids. The Hells Angels had put a contract on me. That contract had been exposed to the Aryan Brotherhood, to the MS-13, to the 18th Street Gang in Los Angeles. Threats to kidnap my kids, threats to gang rape my wife, threats to inject me with the AIDS virus. Multiple threats stacked up over and over and over. And the people that I was working for chose not to do anything about it. Like I was told face to face, the threats against you are too big. They're too widespread. Like you're on your own. We can't contain this situation. Like figure it out. And so I pushed back against that. I said, man, you can't treat me or our undercovers like this. I wasn't the first person to have gone through something similar to that. I felt like I needed to take a stand, yes, for myself, but for all of us in the past and for future undercovers. Like you can't do this. You can't ask us or allow us to run these operations. And then when it comes back home, turn your back on us. And man, making that internal complaint, man, I poked the tiger. They doubled down on me. They unmasked all my backstopping. They exposed all my personal information. It made it open source. The location of my house, all those things. 3 months after I was unmasked, my house was burned to the ground by arsonists. I actually felt a sense of relief in this tragedy, wrongly thinking internally, like now they can't ignore this. Now they can't ignore these threats. Arsonists came in and destroyed my house, and every single thing that I owned was gone. And they doubled down again, and these criminal executives built a task force designed to frame me as the arsonist of my own house. So, and it was right. It caused me to question everything that I had learned to believe and trust in my adult life, in my profession. And like nothing made sense anymore. And I guess probably the upside now is that when I reflect on that, I'd spent my undercover career betraying people, gaining their trust, gaining their friendship, like learning of their criminal schemes and activities, and then reporting that and betraying that friendship I'd built. When I was betrayed, when it came back on me, man, I didn't like it. It sucked. I was like, man, like I don't deserve this. I don't have this coming. But man, life's not fair. It doesn't always work out the way we want it to. I truly believe that life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react to it. And so I went back. And like, man, in the eyes of ATF, or at least a handful of people in ATF, man, I became public enemy number one. They were after me, and they were doing everything they could to make sure that I got locked up. And again, that's the entire agency. Man, I love ATF. I never stopped loving the men and women with their boots on the ground who are out there working and doing dangerous things and taking risky assignments to try to protect and defend us. I ran into a perfect storm of executive corruption. The people that were retaliating and abusing and intending harm on me were the exact same people that were running ATF's Operation Fast and Furious and knowingly trafficking guns to the cartels in Mexico. These dudes were operating above the law. They were operating with impunity. So to come after me or to try to hurt me, that was just a course of business for these days.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing to get betrayed by the group that you're going after and then coming after you. That's one thing. That's kind of an occupational hazard. And I'm sure at some point you filed that away in your head of the possibilities of things happening. But then when it's your team who you're doing this for coming after you is I don't even have the words of how mad I am with hearing this story and I'm mad because it's not the first time. Dan, how many guests have we had in either, Pete, and Victor, and other people who've gone through this same crap and I don't get it. And then these idiots, sorry, they're idiots, wonder why no one wants the job. They wonder why recruitment is in the basement and people don't want to do this job anymore. And that's a perfect example of why they can't get anyone that loves this job anymore.
The people, the small handful of people that were abusing me and retaliating against me, they never deserved a badge or a gun. They never should have been allowed to be on the job. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier. They were on the job for themselves. They were me guys. They never understood that it's about us.
You need that support. You need to know you're part of a team. We talked earlier about how important teamwork is to success in life in general, especially in law enforcement sports, how it's all sort of a part of the learning and growth process and how you can be successful. And when your own team...
I do need to say this, man. Like, I'm not bitter about it. I was for a while. I was angry for a while. I'm not anymore. I'm not burning for anybody. People make mistakes. They make bad decisions. I look at myself like I've made a million mistakes. I've committed a million sins in my life. But God and my wife and my kids, my friends have given me 1,000,001 second chances to try to get it right. And so if I'm asking for that grace, like, I have to be willing to extend it to other people. It's not a one-way street. So, the people that came after me, man, I'm not burning for them. I'm not bitter for them. I've gotten past it. People do things that are wrong. And hopefully when we do something wrong and make a mistake, hopefully we learn from that lesson and don't repeat it. And that was the motivation behind my complaint and my dispute. Was like, look, you guys made some mistakes. Let's not do this again. Don't do it to the next guy. Don't put the next guy through what you just put me through. Let's be better than that.
And as a person of faith, and I can tell you are, we know that redemption is available for everyone. We know that we're all sinners. We all make mistakes, and we seek salvation through Him. And it's that grace, it's that undeserved love, undeserved forgiveness that we seek. So it's really nice to hear. It's good, heartwarming to hear you say that you don't hold it against them, because that bitterness would eat you up and ruin your life, and it does no good. We all have to meet our God, and when we meet our God, we'll have to answer for our actions. It's a shame that you went through it, and I don't want to see it happen to other people. But as Tom said, we have had guests on. We've got our own experiences of having our own organizations and other organizations turn their backs on us. Not to the extent you did. Yours is a horrible, horrible story, and I'm so sad to see that you and your family went through that. And it takes courage to have the attitude you have towards it, but we appreciate you sharing it. It is possible. Politics, bureaucracy, and the wrong people can make for a horrible, lethal cocktail, right? And that's what happened with you.
Well, Dan, but on the other side, don't be sad that it happened. Be like I'm thankful that I went through it. I'm thankful that I was the brunt of it, because I was built for it. I was built to push back. I was built to resist against it. And I will say this, and I learned this the hard way. If the only time you're talking to God is when you're in trouble, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. That's right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow. So tell us how this story, your saga, your career with ATF ends, and what, if anything, you can share about what you've been doing since, other than writing and doing public appearances, which you're phenomenal at.
Well, Mike, I retired. I retired on my terms. My lawsuit, I won and proved the allegations to be true in a court. But DOJ, like, they told me in the process, we know this is going to trial. We know you're not going to give this up. We know what you're going to prove. And even when you win, you're going to win on the facts and evidence. We're never going to let you win. And so we won at the trial level. DOJ appealed the case. The appellate court didn't touch the facts and evidence. They didn't touch the trial court findings, but they decided that ATF had not broken the law in the way that they had not broken a law. And so it was an unsatisfying conclusion to that dispute. But man, it's upward and onward. Like, you have to keep moving forward. I was not going to allow that to define me. And so, I've coached high school football. I do training. I speak at law enforcement training events. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Arizona teaching undercover police operations. I get a lot of satisfaction in trying to find the good and the positive in sometimes situations or stories or events that might not.
Wow.
Wow.
That's exceptional. I can only imagine.
Talk about a inspirational person, Jay, really, to where you started, with the thoughts of a football career and going to ATF, getting shot your fourth day on the job, doing the undercover operations that you did, and you named them with bombs and guns and drugs and everything else, getting to the point of what you went through with the hierarchy of ATF, and then retiring and still staying in the game and giving back to the younger generations who are looking to get into this job is so inspiring and shows the man you are. And it's great to hear that. It takes a lot to do that. I mean, it's not easy just sitting here listening to this story, and then where you're at now with giving back is just awe-inspiring. So great.
Well, Tom and Dan, you both have made flattering statements about me in our discussion and in your introduction. That sound heroic. But I'll say this: I've had the privilege of rubbing shoulders with real heroes. I know what a hero looks like. I know who heroes are. Man, I'm not a hero. Like I said earlier, man, I'm a common man who was placed in some uncommon situations and just did the best I could. So with the good comes some bad. Guess what? Welcome to life.
That's right.
That's right. And I tell the kids I coach, I tell the kids in the classes I instruct, I'm talking to a group of law enforcement officers, I tell them the same thing. You want something you never had? You're going to have to do things you've never done to get it. You want people to remember your name? You better do something they can never forget. And that's how I've tried to conduct myself, like even now.
It's just a privilege, to have someone like you here and to hear the story. And that was always the basis for this show, to give that backstage pass of stories and things that no one knows about. I mean, 99% of what you just discussed, no one's going to hear. No one's going to know about. They read your book, they'll know it. But to hear it is what we always wanted from this podcast and this show, to have people like you explain what this is all about. Other than what you went through afterwards, it's an ugly job. It's hard to do. Like you said, and you fail and you fail and you fail. but the biggest part is finding your way out of that failure to then be successful the next time. And that's what you did. And you say that over and over again during the show. Failure, it's okay to fail. It's okay. Everyone does. And you do it more times than you succeed, and that's okay. Uh, and to do it at the level you did, and then, kind of teaching and mentoring the young to be a certain way is great to hear. We need more of it. That's all. Basically, we need more of it.
Well, Tom, my message to follow up on that is telling people, and don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try hard things. Life isn't comfortable and convenient. Be afraid of not trying. Be afraid of how you're going to feel if something's difficult in front of you and you're afraid to take it on.
No, you're right. I think Teddy Roosevelt has a famous quote about that.
It's we
But,
learned so many lessons today. I did, because things run through your mind.
I did as
but
well,
when
about
you
you
hear
as a
someone
man.
else talk about
As much
it,
as I could read
and
about
someone
your
else say it, you
career
learn.
in
We've
books,
learned
and I could
doing this show from so many people, and it's a privilege to have you on. I know, the hero part of it. I understand. I get 100%. I understand, especially when you come from a humble background and you just did what you do. And, I've had Dan's gotten mad at me sometimes where he'll talk about a case I did, and I'll just say, I just did it. It was just part of the day. But that makes, what you did a little special.
humility.
And do you have anything coming up? You got any events you're going at, any speaking engagements, anything you want to plug, that we will certainly take care of for you?
Yeah, well, you know what? I've always got some conference out there in the future, and some place to go speak, and I'm always flattered to be asked to speak, and it's humbling to stand in front of a group of your peers. Um, but in those presentations, I try to conduct myself and speak in the same way that I'm speaking with you guys today. I try to tell my stories honestly, transparently, talk about my mistakes and my failures, as well as my successes. And I'm proud of my successes, and I'm ashamed and regretful of some of my mistakes. And man, welcome to life.
Welcome to life is certainly the message, I think, for this. If we had a banner we could put on each show, I think that would be it for this show. Welcome to life, because it's so true. And Jay, it was an absolute privilege to have you here. I kind of knew what the show was going to be like and how it was going to go. I've watched you on other interviews and listened intently in what you were saying, and we couldn't wait to have you on this show. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity, the message, and give everyone a glimpse into the perils and dangers of this job, and what we do every day. Maybe have a little bit extra respect, when you see someone out there, a little extra thought in your mind about what is going on in the mind of a law enforcement officer when you see them on the street.
Well, if I had to do it all over again, people ask me, "Hey, would you do it again?" You get shot your first week on the job. I was in another shooting where I was shot, run over by a car 18 months later. All the undercover work, the drugs, the guns, the bombs, the narcotics, the deep cover, the Hells Angels infiltration, the death threats afterwards, the retaliations from ATF. Would you do it again? And absolutely would I do it again. I would do it better with hindsight. Now knowing where my mistakes are and where I stumbled, I would be better at it, but I'd do it again, because for you and for the people that are out there listening, if we are not going to take a stand against the predators and against the violence, who's going to do it? Who's going to step up? Is your next door neighbor going to do it? Is your dentist going to do it? Is the guy that fixes your car going to do it? It's on us to do it.
Yep. Incredibly well said. What an interview. What a discussion. And I think a couple of things that I'm taking away from it, just to recap. First of all, if you're going to go into this profession at all, and it doesn't have to be undercover, just serving others with a badge and a gun, do it with integrity, do it with honor, do it for the right reasons, do it with passion, or don't do it at all, because it's going to drag you down. You have to be tough and strong to stay with it and to rise above it if you can. Secondly, expect failure, expect failed leadership, expect all of it, because we're human beings. Human beings run everything, right? It's the world we live in. We make mistakes, we're flawed. But always, always stick true to your convictions, stay true to the truth, be honest, and do the right thing. And that sounds very simplistic, but it's very, very important in law enforcement to keep that in your mind. Next would be, I want to understand, I want to just relay how important it is to keep your family and those you love as your priority. When you give yourself over to a job, any career, and you forget about that, that's a terrible thing, and it's time you can't get back. It's time wasted. It's time you will regret. And you so eloquently and so powerfully conveyed to us how you felt after that. But and thank you for being honest with that, because I think a lot of us can get caught up in what we do.
Well, Dan, I'll say this, and it's the same thing that I tell my football kids, but it applies to all of us in Copland. Effort, energy, and enthusiasm. The 3 E's, they pretty much will fix anything, right? You can have effort, energy, and enthusiasm towards whatever it is you're doing. You'll get through it. Talking about some of the downsides, law enforcement and first responder suicides are epidemic. And so you guys are helping to defeat that stigma. Man, like I suffer from depression. I battle it. Like I've been on the brink in my life where I didn't know if what I stood for was worth anything. Man, like lean on each other and talk about it and be open about it and communicate and seek help. Like very rarely do we ever solve problems all by ourselves. And like talk to people and be open and ask, like let your guard down and say, man, I need some help right now. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Absolutely correct. Very, very well said, and so true. Anybody listening to this, if you're in law enforcement or love someone who is, please let the message come through today that there are a variety of different organizations out there that are outside your agency. Whatever it is that you're comfortable with, if you need to talk with someone, it's not just get a friend. Sometimes you need a pro, but get a friend too. Have community. Have interests outside of what it is you do for a living, so that way you're a well-rounded person and you have other foundations in your life, because this foundation of law enforcement as a career can and does get rocked during your career. And if that rocks all of who you are, you have a problem. So build that foundation, stay communicative. Great points, Jay.
Well, I'll say this, Dan, if, to people out there in Copland, if you're feeling desperate, if you're feeling like you're alone, or that you're the only person going through it, like I'm not hard to find. Reach out to me. I know a lot of people in that community that want to help. I will help you find help. And if you have trepidation about it, if you're worried about it, man, I'll go with you. I'll put my arm around your shoulder. I'll get you where you need to go to get some help, but you got to reach out. I'm not hard to find. I will help you if I can, if you'll let me.
Outstanding. Outstanding. And we feel the same way, right, Tom? I mean, we would welcome any communication into our website anytime from anybody. We'll get you into the hands of the right people who can help you. We know a lot of people as well, Jay, and we probably know a lot of the same people. We do. And we're big believers in that. So I would rather have you call or reach out at 3 o'clock in the morning than get a notification to go to your funeral. And I don't mean to be sour or really, negative, but that's just a fact. I'd rather get that.
There's no judgment in it. No one's judging you. No one's
Nope.
like thinking less of you because you're feeling weak, like, let us surround you. Let us wrap our arms around you and get you back to where you feel strong again. We can do it. And we know the people that can help get you there. And if I don't know them, I will find them for you.
Right.
And you know
There you
what?
have it. Anyone who's listening.
Yeah, we just, Jay is just adds to the list. Everyone who follows us, watches us, and all that knows the affiliations we have with our great partners. Jay just got added to that list with Irish Angel, with Blue Lives Matter, with the Wounded Blue, with FHE Shatterproof Program. All of those. And like Dan just said, thegoldshieldshow.com. Hey, contacts, hit us up. We can get in touch with anyone. Dan has a great saying, and it fits here. We're one phone call away from anybody. Okay, we are one phone call away from anybody. Our network is very big, and it's not making us out to be anything that we're not. I'm just saying it's a fact. Our network is all over this country, and it starts with the one phone call, the one email of asking for help. And like we've said it for a year, a little over a year now, Dan, if we can help one person, all of this is worth it. All of it's worth it. And,
Right.
and we're hoping to God.
And here's the unique pressure. Yeah, and here's the unique pressures you face in law enforcement. You get it from the street. You get it from your own agency. You get it at home. Sometimes you've got all three of them coming at you for a variety of reasons. Where do you go? And then it starts coming at you up here from within. And when you've got all that at play, you need help.
The worst thing that can happen to any of us is when that desperation makes you feel like you're alone. And Matt, I get it, but you're not. You're not alone.
Outstanding. Well, we cannot thank you enough, Jay, for your time. We could spend hours talking to you. We want to be respectful of your time, but we also really, really look forward to the day, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, when we sit down and break bread with you and get to meet you in person, because you are somebody who we have enormous respect for and gratitude for your time, not just your career, but the man you become, and giving us your time and your insights. Thank you so much, Jay. I know our audience is going to really appreciate this. We
Very
do.
kind. Very kind. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the audience, and God bless to all of you. I wish all of you success in everything you do and everywhere you go.
Well, just echoing
Tom?
Dan. Go ahead. Line it up, Dan.
No, Tom, take us out like you normally do.
So, listen, this is a memorable show. We knew it would be. We even got more than we anticipated. Jay, thank you so much for being here, for the message. We could sit here and tell stories every day, every show, but when those stories are a message, it makes it better, and that's what today was. And the people watching this and listening to it are going to get that. It was inspirational, and thank you so much. And like we do every week, Jay, you want to go ahead one more time?
No, I was just going to say, to follow up on that comment, is that everybody in Copland has got those hero stories. But like for me, at least my personal position is that if I don't speak of the mistakes, if I'm not honest and transparent about it, it takes away from the flattering stories, because there's two sides to all of us. And if you're judging yourself by some impossible standard to meet, some impossible idol or example that you're trying to follow, then no one can do that.
You're right. Absolutely right. And what an ending to a memorable show. Like we do all the time, and here's a perfect example of why we do this. Pray for law enforcement officers out there. Pray for the members of the military, because it is a dangerous job. It is a dangerous world. And these officers, men and women in uniform, both in the military and in law enforcement, walk out that door every day having no idea what's going to happen, whether they're coming home or not, and their families have to deal with that. one of the most terrifying things in the world is the unknown. And that's what's faced with them every single day. So please keep them all in your prayers. Give them a wave on the street. Say thank you. Pat them on the back. That means the world to them. Trust me, we've all been there. The three of us have experienced it. Someone saying thank you is very impactful. So do that whenever you see them on the street. And another memorable, great show. For my partner, Dan Murphy, this is Tom Smith and Jay Dobyns. Thank you so much. And a quick message. Make sure we go to youtube.com/@goldshields, rumble.com/goldshields. Follow us on all the audio platforms out there. And, of course, thegoldshieldshow.com. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to a great show. We'll see everybody soon. Stay safe.